Hello all, it's Devar Krasniansky from Adai. I'm working together with the Crown Heights Jewish Community Council, and tonight is part 4 of our Shalom Bayis Week. We've done several other workshops, and you can access all of those at adai.org/past-events. And if you have any questions during this call, you can send it to us via email at info@adai.org, or you can send it to us anonymously to the anonymous form at adai.org/ask-anonymous-questions. Tonight we'll be talking with Rabbi Shais Taub on the topic of how to enhance your marriage even without the help of the spouse. So we'll just jump right into the call. Thank you, Rabbi Taub.
Okay, so Rabbi, thank you for joining the call. Yeah, we've discussed, in the past we've discussed about soft problems as opposed to hard problems, and we discussed that soft problems are one of the biggest reasons for divorce. Mm-hmm. So assuming that we're working with two healthy enough people, we're not talking about like abusive behaviors, the people say it takes two to tango to make the change. But is it really at all possible that one person can be really the one to start it?
Okay. So, first of all, maybe before I answer your question, maybe I'll give a disclaimer. And that is, you mentioned the hard problems and the soft problems. And I won't get into that again. People can listen to that. I think there's a recording from that talk where we went into that at length. But what I do want to say is my disclaimer is that I'm certainly not here to tell anybody that their problems are the hard problems and soft problems. To tell you that you just need to try harder, or to tell you that it's all in your hands and that you have the power to change it all. I'm not here to tell that to anyone, and the reason is because there is so much pain involved in when there is a lack of shalom bayis. I really truly feel that is what touches us mostly. Is our intimate relationships is so intertwined with our self-concept. It goes all the way back to the beginning of humanity with Adam and Chava, and we know that their awareness of their own capacity to bond intimately was intertwined with their awareness of self, which was also intertwined with shame. And when we talk about das, as in the tree of das, of knowledge, what we're really talking about is our self-awareness, which has to do with our self-concept as a man or a woman in an intimate relationship. So when there are problems in that area, it touches us to the core, to the absolute core of our identity. And that's the reason why I want to make this disclaimer and say I'm not here to tell anybody who's feeling pain because of marital problems that they just need to take the initiative and try and be brave and be the one to change. And that's because I just can't take it upon myself to decide for anybody how much pain and for how long they can endure pain. So that's my disclaimer. So everyone has to decide for themselves whether or not what I'm about to say applies to them. And if you feel this does not apply to your case, if your marriage, or because of you, or because of your spouse, or whatever it is, then I humbly, I would say remove the advice, but I'm not even putting it out there, in the first place. I'm just, if it applies, if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. That's my disclaimer. Okay. So now, if I remember the question after that long disclaimer, which is probably going to be longer than my actual answer, the question was, can change in a marriage begin with oneself? And let me just say I guess this is another disclaimer. I'm into the disclaimers today. I'm not a marriage therapist. I'm not a therapist at all. I'm a rabbi, specifically a Hasidic rabbi, specifically Chabad Hasidic rabbi, which means my training is in Chassidus. And for whatever that's worth, my commentary is that change always begins with oneself. Everything we do is personal avodah. Everything in life comes down to me and my relationship with Hashem. And it radiates out from there. So anything I want to change in my life, really, it starts with me changing myself. And when I'm talking about changing myself, what I really mean is my relationship with Hashem. And when I reprioritize my own decisions about my own behaviors, then there's a ripple effect. And I don't control anyone other than myself, but I certainly do influence them. And when I start to control myself in the ways that I've decided to do, then people react to me differently. It's not a promise that they're going to react to me the way I want them to. It's not a promise they'll react to me the way they should. But it is certain that when one part of the system changes, then the whole system begins to change. And the only part of the system, which I'm part of, that I can change is myself. So, yes, when I'm part of a marriage, when I start to change myself, it does change the marriage. It changes the dynamics. It changes the energy. It changes the whole overall context. And that's the answer to the question. Now, the hows, how we actually do it, maybe I don't want to take away your questions. Maybe those are your other questions about how you actually do it. But the answer to the original question is a yes or no question. Yes, absolutely. We can begin with ourselves, focus on ourselves and our own personal change, and that has tremendous influence on everything around us, including and perhaps especially on our closest relationships.
Let's talk about what some of those resistances. Like people say, why should I be the one to change?
Right.
Can you address that?
Well, I'll give a real practical answer. Why should I be the one to change? No one's picking on you. It's just, who else is going to be the one to change? Or I'll put it differently. Who else are you going to change? Hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyirei shamayim, right? The sages say everything is in the hands of heaven except for one's all of heaven. So, yirei shamayim, all of heaven, is a pretty broad category. I mean, basically, the more Chassidus you learn, the more you learn that everything all your choices have some moral aspect to them, some moral implications. So, you don't really get to choose what happens to you, the way God's running the world and how he has other people in your life behave. But you totally control your moral choices, your own Yireh Shamayim. But that's your own Yireh Shamayim, your own moral choices. You don't get to choose other people's moral choices. So when you ask, why should I be the one? Well, if you want power, let's look at it this way. If you want to actually exercise a decision that you have the power to carry out, if you actually want to put forth energy that you can guarantee will be well spent, then really the only option you have is to change yourself. Certainly, you know that all the energy that you've expended getting the other person to change has not been fruitful. In fact, it's been pretty much the opposite. It's led to frustration, which is probably why somebody finds themselves even asking this question. Somebody saying, my marriage is in trouble, why should I be the one to change? Okay. So if you're at the point already where you're saying my marriage is in trouble, I'm guessing that you didn't wake up yesterday and decide that. You probably have been aware of it and tried to do something about it, and probably part of what you tried to do is getting the other person to act differently. And the question, I guess, is, how did that work for you? So if you found that frustrating, which it's always frustrating when we try to make choices for other people, we have free will to make decisions, but only decisions for ourselves. We don't have free will over other people's decisions. So when we try to exert that type of control where we have none, we're going to end up frustrated. So the question becomes, okay, so if you're done with that, if you're frustrated trying to get other people to behave differently, getting other people to make different decisions, all right, are you ready now to be empowered? Do you want to start making decisions that you're actually going to be able to carry out? Are you interested in changing yourself? So that's the practical answer to the question. Why should you be the one? Because you're the one who can choose what you're going to do. You're not going to be able to choose what the other person's going to do. So let's make decisions that we actually will make us feel empowered. They'll make us feel that we have some personal dignity, make us feel less of a victim, less reactive, more proactive, that kind of stuff. And when we start to do that, and we start to get our self-respect back, and we start making decisions that we can actually carry out, not only is it just more effective, but we start feeling good about it because, in contrast with the frustration you feel and the exhaustion and totally being emotionally drained when you're trying to get other people to behave the way that they should, this is the exact opposite. This is very fulfilling, very satisfying. The hard work doesn't tire you out because, we don't get burnt out from hard work. We get burnt out from wasting our energy. But when we work hard and we see results, then we feel satisfaction. When you guide to matzasi time. So when you toil, you work hard, then you find. But that's toiling to find within yourself. Not that if I toil, somebody else is going to find what I want them to find. All right, if only it worked that way. If everyone we loved, all we would have to do is work hard, and they would make the discovery. But that's not how it works. We work hard, we make our own discoveries. They work hard, they make their own discoveries. So that's it. It's on us. Each one of us, we got to be the one to make the first move. That's the only practical, sane way to go about it.
Right. So, but then following that train of thought, if it's too hard, then maybe it's not even worth it, so I shouldn't even try at all. Why are we fighting so much? What is it worth it? Or should I put the energy to something else?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me lean into that question, and let me flow with it, because there's part of the premise of the question that I agree with, which is, you're right. Why is there so much resistance? Why are you fighting so hard? You're right. So a little bit of what I'm saying is, okay, so let's let go a little bit. Let's stop struggling so much. Let's stop fighting it so much. But let me qualify what I mean by that. Where are we feeling the resistance? Where are we feeling the, like you're turning a doorknob that's locked? If we think about it, it's really when we're trying to exercise control over the other person's behaviors. That's what's wearing us out. And that's where we're getting resistance. And that's why, it's such a struggle. So in that aspect, maybe let's let go. I heard a good acronym, detach. We talk a lot about detachment, letting go gracefully, giving people space. So detach is an acronym, Rosh Tevis, for don't even try and change him, or don't even try and change her, whatever gender is appropriate. So let go, and stop struggling, stop banging your head against the wall as far as trying to get specific reactions, because we're seeing that's just a losing battle. But where can we put in hard work that's going to feel satisfying? Like I was talking about earlier, when I make decisions about how I'm going to behave, then I can be satisfied because I can implement that. I can make goals for myself, and I can achieve them. Not if I define my goals as I'm going to do such and such, and then he or she is going to respond in a certain way. Well, that's not fair to myself because I don't know how he or she is going to respond. I don't control that. but I can make goals about how I'm going to behave. I can even make goals about how I'm going to respond to someone else's behavior. And there I can feel accomplishment. Not only can I feel accomplishment, I will accomplish. So to answer the question about, why is it worth the struggle, and maybe if it's so much struggle, it's a sign just to let go. Yeah, okay, fine, you're right. Let go of trying to elicit specific reactions from other people. That's in general, and especially with a spouse. Let go of that. That struggle, you're right, is not worth it. We've proven to ourselves thousands of times over and over again that it's not worth the investment. People are going to do what people are going to do. So let go. And then an amazing thing happens when we're not wasting our energy trying to control what's uncontrollable, or rather what's uncontrollable by us. Then we have all this new energy that we forgot that we had to focus on accomplishing our own goals. Another thing happens, by the way, which a lot of times when we are struggling and putting forth a lot of energy, talking about fruitless energy, there's this sort of approach avoidance dynamic that takes place. You see this a lot where, one couple is leaning in, one spouse is leaning in. There's a couple, and one is leaning in and one is leaning out. And it's almost like a seesaw. The more one is going up, meaning putting in effort into the marriage, then the more the other one is like exactly inversely going down, meaning not putting effort into the marriage, or even putting your efforts elsewhere. So one of the ways of breaking that cycle, and definitely is a cycle, the pursuit avoidance cycle, is let go. But letting go doesn't just mean spitefully like, okay, do whatever the heck you want, I don't care about you, sour grapes. Let go means, okay, you're an adult, you have free choice, I can't control you, I accept that reality. And now I'm going to put the focus on myself and the ways that I can grow as a person. And what that does is, A, it breaks the cycle of the approach and avoidance, or the pursuit and the pursuit and avoidance sort of seesaw that I was describing. B, another thing that happens, or can happen, is that when you have all of this energy to work on yourself and improve yourself, that's actually very interesting. People who are growing, who are healthy, people who have dignity, self-respect, who are taking care of themselves in the right way, other people are interested in that. They are attracted to that. They want to be around that. They want to get some of that. They want some of that to rub off on them. So rather than trying to work on the other person, which is pushing them away, working on yourself not only does it have the advantage of it's actually productive instead of wasting your energy, but it has another advantage of it actually makes you a desirable person to be around, or it increases how desirable of a person. I'm saying you're already a desirable person to be around, but when you work on yourself, you take care of yourself, you are growing, you are attentive to your own needs, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, then it's has the exact opposite effect. Again, the purpose isn't in order to elicit a response from the other person. It's not a chess move. It's not, I'm going to make this move and because I'm anticipating you're going to make another move. It has to be genuine, it has to be real. In other words, I'm growing as a person because that's what I ought to be doing anyways. If it happens to make me a more pleasant person to be around, and it happens to then benefit my relationship with my spouse, that's great. That's a bonus. But I'm working on myself because that's what I would be doing anyways, because that's what we were given 120 years to do. I think in Chassidus we call it being a pnimi. Pnimi means the work that I'm doing, I'm not doing it with an agenda. I'm doing it for its own sake. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And then it happens to have all types of side benefits that are wonderful.
Okay, that's really good. So a few things came to mind as you were discussing that. Firstly, that I think it's important for people, especially younger people, to realize that conflict is a healthy part of marriage. It's a normal part of marriage. And when the beginning stage of lala is over, and that's the way it's designed by God, then we start getting into conflict. That is what happens. Not everything is going to be beautiful and romantic and wonderful for day one till day 120 years later. Mm-hmm. So I think that normalizing is also important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and conflict is part of any relationship, especially a close relationship. People are bound to have different opinions, different ways of doing things. And when you're married and some of the things you're doing are affecting the other person directly, there's bound to be conflict. And conflict really isn't as far as I understand, conflict is not even really an indicator of a marital problem. I mean, what I'm saying is not only is conflict itself not a problem, it's not even an indicator of other problems. It's just sort of part of marriage. I believe what they say is a major indicator of problems in a marriage is avoidance of conflict. That's a different story. But conflict itself is not a problem. I think what we can do is, as we mature, learn how to be more respectful when we're in conflict. In other words, most couples tend to disagree about the same stuff for their entire marriage. Whatever it was that they first fought about, they're probably going to continue fighting about that for their entire lives. But what they do is they fight more gently, they fight more respectfully, they mellow. So one of the skills to develop as a married person is not how to avoid conflict, and not even necessarily how to resolve conflict, but just that when it comes up, to do it respectfully, to do it low-key. Don't put so much energy into it. It's not worth our energy. It's just a thing that happens. It's a thing we go through from time to time, and just sort of don't feed it. Don't give it extra energy, which I think is one of the mistakes, especially that young couples make, is they take the conflict so personally, or maybe even they get so scared, they're frightened of it, and it touches them so deeply because of the fear involved and because of maybe the personal affront that they feel. Maybe they feel slighted, insulted, and then the fight becomes impassioned, and that can cause problems. Because when there's all that energy into the conflict, then we say things that can drive us apart, and do things that can drive us apart. But if the conflict itself can just just acknowledge it as one of those things, just part of life, and we just say, oh yeah, there's that conflict again, just sort of ride through it, then it really doesn't have to be a problem whatsoever, or even an indicator of a problem.
So going back to what we were talking before about why should I be the one to change, another slightly different way of looking at it is if I'm making a change, that means I am admitting that what I was doing before was wrong. And for some people, that's very difficult to make that admission.
Well, first of all, you don't have to say it was wrong. You could say, I know a better way now. I'm older and wiser, and now I know a better way. So I don't think anyone should have any problem with that. We're always growing, we're always changing, we're always improving. Or another way to look at it is you can say, well, it's not wrong, meaning it's not objectively wrong. On paper, it's right, but who cares? It's not working. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? So, all right, my way is right. But what good does that do if it's causing me frustration? So I think it's easy to let go of that. It's okay to say either A, what I was doing was okay, but I found a better way, or B, which I think is the bigger bittul, of saying, you know what? Doesn't matter if I'm technically right. It's not working for me, so let me abandon that and let me be open, let me be receptive to a way that's going to be more satisfying.
Now let's get into it a little bit more. So what would be some key mindsets or mindset shift that would enhance the marriage for the one person who's working on it alone? What would be a new way of thinking about it?
We did a conference call a month or two ago, so I'm not sure if I'm recycling my own stories at this point yet, but I believe I may be. But it's worthwhile to tell the story. There was a Hasidic Rebbe who was descended from the Ruzhner. The Ruzhner was a great-grandson of the Mezritch Magid, and this particular court, Husyatner Chassidus, is descended from the Ruzhner, and they're from the Ukraine. And during the 1930s, they ended up in Vienna, Austria, which was a very cosmopolitan, very modern city at the time, not a place where there were traditional Jews. So the Husyatner Rebbe was walking down the street in 1930s Vienna, and a German reporter saw him and asked somebody, who is that interesting person? So somebody said, he's the Husyatner Rebbe. He's not a regular rabbiner in German. Rabbis are rabbiner. He's a Wunder rabbiner, a wonder rabbi in German. So the reporter said, well, I would like to meet a Wunder rabbiner, a wonder rabbi. So we arranged a meeting. And the reporter asked the Husyatner Rebbe, I hear that you are a Wunder rabbiner, a wonder rabbi. Could you tell me what that is? So the Husyatner Rebbe said, well, a regular rabbi, a rabbiner, a regular rabbi, he runs a congregation, so he's in control of the whole shul. Then you have a bigger rabbi, like the Shtat Rav, the city rabbi. He controls the whole city. Then you have even bigger than that, like the chief rabbi. He controls the whole country. Then you have the Wunder Rabbiner, the wonder rabbi. He controls himself. So, by the way, interestingly, if you think about it, according to Tanya, a Wunder Rabbiner is a Beinoni, in the language of Tanya, right? Somebody who controls himself. Mm-hmm. So, maybe what one person calls a wonder rabbi, a rebbe, we Tanya like call a Beinoni, but whatever the term you want to use, he controls himself. We don't control other people, even those closest to us, especially those closest to us, and we cannot control them. So let's look at it like this. Maybe it'll help to step away from marriage for a second, because it's maybe so emotionally charged. But let's go to something that's perhaps equally as emotionally charged, but just to change the subject, and just to give us a little bit of distance. Let's talk about chinuch. Let's talk about raising our children. Okay. Is our duty, and it's a mitzvah, we have a mitzvah to mechanech our children. Okay. Is our duty to get our children to behave? That sounds like a frustrated parent. That sounds like a parent who's annoyed with their child's behavior. I just need my children to behave. No. Our duty, like every mitzvah we have, is there's some behavior that's incumbent upon us. So my duty as a parent is to parent. Or, I might even say just to parent, to be the kind of parent that my child deserves to see. So chinuch isn't making a child behave. Chinuch is actually making myself behave like the kind of parent that my child deserves to see. All right, so let's put it back into the framework of marriage. Shalom bayis isn't the skill of getting your spouse to act the way you want them to. Shalom is mastering yourself and being the best spouse you can be.
Okay, so building on that, are there any other mindset shifts that from the way of previously perhaps nagging or fetching that would be in this line of how to do this on your own?
Yeah. I think one thing is a lot of times emphasis is placed on communication. And there's a presupposition that we need to learn how to communicate better. And communication is certainly a nice thing to have. It's nice to be able to communicate. But it's not the end-all and be-all. And it's certainly not the foundation of any relationship. Communication is something that happens between two people who already have a relationship. The focus isn't on learning how to speak better, to be more articulate. And I'll put it like this. For most people who are frustrated in their marriage right now, they will tell you, I'm speaking till I'm blue in the face. I've told him 1,000,000 times, or I keep telling her that. So is it really that you're not articulate? Is it really that you don't know how to say what you want to say? Of course, you are speaking. You have said it over and over and over again. So clearly, that's not the issue. Taking responsibility for your own behaviors and sort of looking at marriage in this light, the way we're describing it, looking at how to be the kind of spouse that I want to be, doesn't even require any communication, doesn't require a discussion. In fact, it's probably best done without any discussion. In other words, if you go and you tell your spouse, hey, I just heard this interesting call, and I made a decision that I'm now going to stop trying to elicit particular behaviors and responses from you, and I'm going to look at marriage as an opportunity for my own spiritual growth, and check it out and watch and tell me how I'm doing. That would probably, that proclamation would probably almost entirely undercut the value of whatever growth process it is that you were about to embark upon. So one thing is, don't worry so much about the talking. Don't worry so much about the communication. You don't have to label everything. You don't have to describe everything. It can just be what it is, which is your own personal growth process. Another thing I would add, and this is a sensitive topic, again, and I want to harken back to my original disclaimer at the beginning of the call, which is that I can't tell anybody how much pain they should endure or for how long they should endure pain. But what I will say is the whole point of the soul's descent into this world is to be tested. And one of the ways that the soul really descends into this world and really gets involved in bringing other souls into this world and settling this world is through marriage and building a family. The real Dirba Tachtainim is in a home and a family and marriage and the relationships under your own roof. And that's all beset with nisyonis. The soul comes down and is tested. And the biggest part of the soul coming down, or really what it means to come down, is to build a Jewish home, be involved in that, the day-to-day, the domestic stuff. And so it's all full of challenge. But the point the soul comes down is for challenge, for tests, trials, tribulations. So it's not surprising that Hashem sets us up with someone who is going to us or someone who is going to push buttons, or who is going to, their rough edges are going to exactly align with our most sensitive spots. It's no coincidence. It's no coincidence at all. And Hashem sets us up in marriage in order to give us growth opportunities. Now, again, if somebody is going through hell and they feel that they have learned all the lessons they can learn, and they've been pushed as far as they can be pushed, and they can't learn anymore, they can't benefit anymore from the test, and they feel enough is enough, I'm not going to judge that decision. What I am saying is, for those who feel that they are committed to stick it out through the difficulties and through the pain, that they should know that it's not for naught. That it's not just about succeeding in spite of the pain, but that the pain itself is all part of the success. It's divinely orchestrated. It's divinely planned. It's exactly the challenge. It's exactly the kind of obstacle that your neshama needs. And again, I'm not telling anybody that they have to stick it out for that reason, but what I'm saying is that don't be discouraged. Don't be frightened by the challenge. It is your challenge. It was tailored for you. When you hit an obstacle in marriage, don't see it as a sign of failure. Don't see it as something you have a bad fight for you were dealt a lousy hand. See it as another opportunity for personal growth. Is giving you a test so that you will reach inside of yourself and develop your potential. So, again, you're asking what are some of the ways to look at marriage and to take the approach that it's about me and what I can do and what I can change. I think that's one of the big paradigm shifts is look at the entire experience of being a married person as Hashem's way of tailor-making challenges for you that will bring out your best.
For a while we've been talking about mindset. A lot of what we spoke about until now was about mindset, the way to be thinking about it. Are there any specific tips, techniques, or tools that to actually be doing rather than only thinking and having a mind shift? Now, of course, a lot follows your mind, the way you're thinking. Sure. Is there anything specific that someone can do or not do?
Yeah, behaviorally. I mean, that's a fair question. What I would say to the question about what you can do behaviorally in actual ma'aseh, as we call it, but I would say it's like this. Experiment. Remember before I was saying, you asked about what should a person do when their attitude is, hey, what am I doing wrong? Maybe what I'm doing is right. Why should I change it if it's wrong? And I said, well, it might be right, but if it's not working, then you got to try something else. Okay, so let's go back to that for a second. You're asking what behaviors. I don't know. Try out different behaviors. There are a lot of behaviors that might be right, but they might not work. So experiment, trial and error. I think it's almost like sometimes. Let's say a person responds poorly to a certain food. Not that they're allergic, but they don't do well with certain food. It makes them sluggish, makes them tired, it drains their energy. And they don't realize it. They go through their whole childhood, their whole adolescence. And then finally, one day, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, and you say, you know what, let me try cutting out this food. And you don't eat that food for 2 weeks, and I feel completely different. What is? Okay. There's a certain trial and error. Experiment with different behaviors. Or, you know what, you could even do it as a mental exercise. You can think about certain times, even in a marriage where you're experiencing frustration. Obviously, there are times when you're experiencing things that are moving smoothly, and it's a pleasant interaction. But think about those times when things are pleasant and ask yourself, well, what was I doing? What was I doing? Because I know sometimes it seems to us like it's totally random. It's like, I don't even understand. I don't know what behaviors I'm doing that elicit the types of treatment that I want to receive. But what I'm saying is 9 times out of 10, there is something you're doing that elicits a certain reaction. Maybe it's not what you are paying attention to. Maybe you are attributing, you're looking at one behavior and you're ignoring another behavior. But if you try to be methodical about it and you try to be aware, experiment with which behaviors are going to be more successful and which ones are going to be the opposite. Another thing to keep in mind regarding that is that probably some of the, well, I'll put it like this. There are 248 positive commands. There's 365 negative, and a lot more don'ts than there are do's. And there's a reason for that. The boundaries, the don'ts in a relationship are a lot more foundational. They have to come first. There has to be safety. There has to be safety. You have to know that what I say I don't like, you're not going to do it anyway. And then there can be the do's. There can be the warmth, the giving that I can receive from you. So it's a lot more important, what I don't do because of my spouse than what I do for my spouse. So if I'm looking at my own behaviors and I'm experimenting with them, one of the things I want to look at is what's the thing I do that is making my spouse unhappy? Like, what am I doing? And I probably know it. And if I stop and I think about it, my spouse probably told me about it hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, and said, please don't do that. And I probably have a really, 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 really good reason why I have to do it anyway, right? Because I'm not a bad person. I wouldn't just do something that my spouse doesn't like, but I have a really, 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 really good reason why I have to do it anyway. Okay. If you relate to what I'm saying right now, so let's just stop a second and think like this. Okay. This really, 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 really good reason, I'm going to bet you that if you would look at that really, 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 really good reason, you're going to find something, find gold. You're going to strike gold as far as an opportunity to work on yourself. Because I'll put it like this. Anything that's that important to me, that becomes that commands that much obedience from me, something that's so important, and that to the extent that I keep pursuing it, even when I know that my spouse doesn't like it, I think it's worthy of examination just for my own personal growth. Why is that thing such an important thing to me? Or if I can allow myself the liberty of maybe speaking a little bit, provocatively, but why did that thing become such a getchka to me? In other words, my spouse doesn't like it. I know that. But it's really, really important that I have to do it anyway. Okay. So that sounds like a really powerful idol that I have to appease and satisfy that thing to the extent of doing something that I know is going to make me and the closest person in my life miserable. So that would be a really great opportunity for just looking at myself, and what I might find is that thing that's so important that I have this really, 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 really good reason to do it anyway, even though I know it's just driving a wedge between me and my spouse. If I look at it, I will probably also find that is the same thing that drives a wedge between me and Hashem. It's the same thing that drives a wedge between me and my true self, meaning my neshama, my mission, my calling in life. it's probably that thing that's so important that, and for whatever reason, if you're interested in analyzing how the origins of it and how it started, you can go and do that work, or just even to be aware of it. You don't necessarily have to know where it comes from, but just to be aware that that's a weakness, that there's this thing that is commanding so much obedience, so much compliance from you. It's really a worthwhile place to start looking if you want to look to become more free, become more empowered, to have more choices, to enjoy being yourself and living your life and doing what it is that you came to this world to do. That's probably a really good place to start looking as far as your own discovery and figuring out what it is that you need to overcome.
So a question actually just came in, and I guess she's writing that my husband and I are always bickering about the house. I want it to look beautiful, and he's very practical, so he'll put hooks anywhere he thinks a hook should be, and it's really bugging me, and he doesn't listen.
Yeah. Well, that is frustrating because you have one house, and if you could just have two houses, it would solve the problem. But that's not how it works. With film bias, you have to have the same bias. So let's first acknowledge that is very annoying. But let's say like this: you've told him hundreds of times. He seems not to get it. Something about him he's not getting. He's not doing it to spite you. He just clearly he's not doing it to spite you. It's not like a passive aggressive way of taunting you. He doesn't get it. Okay. He probably didn't get it long before he met you. Chances are, the odds are, it's going to continue being something he doesn't get. It's just something, Hashem gave us all our strengths and weaknesses, and it's not one of his strengths. So the question is, we have to ask ourselves, we don't like it. We don't like it. In fact, we don't like it is an understatement. We really, really don't like it. But the question is it demeaning? Is it abusive? Is it
It's in the dining room.
Okay. So can I live with it? Can I live with it? Is it something that is compromising my safety? Is it something that's compromising my spiritual well-being, or mentally, or emotionally, or physically? Or is it just something that I don't like, I strongly dislike? Mm-hmm. If it's just a matter of being something that I strongly dislike, the question is, can I accept the fact he's not doing it to fight me, he's not doing it to hurt me, he doesn't get it, it's his blind spot, I know I told him 1,000 times, but the fact is he doesn't hear it. For whatever reason, it doesn't compute, he doesn't get it. Can I let go of it? I accept the fact that this is the way this person is. Because the other option is to constantly be affronted by it and to constantly be frustrated by it. The likelihood that the behavior is going to change is very, very, very small likelihood the behavior is going to change. So whether it's putting up hooks in the wrong places or it's other behaviors, the question to ask is it compromising my spiritual well-being, my mental health, or is it something that I just really, really don't like? And if so, can I just live with it? Can I just accept that this is reality? I wasn't sent to this world with the world being already perfect. I was sent to a world of imperfection, a world of challenges. This is one of the challenges. This is one of the challenges orchestrated divinely by my Maker, the same Maker who made me the person who loves making sure that everything looks exactly right. that same infinitely wise Eibishter made sure I should marry a guy who doesn't even realize you can put up a hook in the middle of the night.
A similar story I heard from Mrs. Ruddle after her husband passed away, that Rabbi Ruddle, he was known for his animals and things like that, and he used to bring them into the house. And, of course, you could just imagine that would freak her out at the beginning. But later she just got used to it, and she said it actually made him appreciate her getting used to it, and it actually brought them closer by her letting it go that there were snakes and insects in her house. So it was one of those stories that really touched me. So we're getting toward the end of the call. I just have one important question that I would like to cover. Is there anything that we should not do, or like what kind of support should one get, or what kind of supposed support should one avoid when you're trying to work on your marriage alone?
We try to work on your marriage alone. So there's professional help, and then there's non-professional help. One thing to be aware of is if you have made the decision to work on your marriage alone, if you're going to talk to friends about it, you have to be careful. You're going to have supportive friends because it's hard work. Working on yourself is always hard work. And if people who think they're being supportive, for instance, are going to take your side and they think they're supporting you, oh, I wouldn't live with that. Oh, you're right, that's terrible. Oh, it really is your spouse's fault. Well, you can't accept that. Well, that's they mean well. They're trying to support you, but really, that just brings you back to your, the position of, well, it's not my problem. It's my spouse's problem. I don't have to change. They have to change. Okay, great. So now we're back to the position of I don't have to change. The other person has to change. All right, so now what are you supposed to do? Sit there and wait till they change? Or even worse, exert all your energy trying to make them change when that's not going to be productive? So that's one thing, is just to be aware, if you are working on your marriage alone, it can be very, very productive. It can be very productive. But if you're talking to friends, make sure it's the kind of friends who get that and who understand the value of it so that they're going to support you in the right way. As far as professional help, I think it's very easy to figure out who can be helpful because you just ask, like a marriage counselor, will you do marriage counseling for one person? A lot of marriage counselors will laugh and say, how can you do marriage counseling for one person? Because the way they define marriage counseling as opposed to like individual counseling, marriage counseling. So individual counseling is if you're talking to one person. Marriage counseling is if you're talking to two people, which is basically just defining the type of counseling based on how many people are in the room, which is kind of silly. It's not about how many people are there. It's about the methodology. Individual counseling is about insight and self-awareness, self-discovery. Marriage counseling is about how to make a marriage more successful. It's about your relationship, not about looking at understanding yourself better, but really about relating to another person better. So if two people are working on how to relate to each other better, so that's marriage counseling with two people. But if just one person is working on how he or she can relate to your spouse better, so that's also marriage counseling. It's just marriage counseling for one person. So that's pretty easy to make the determination if you're going to get the kind of support. You just ask the first time, do you do marriage counseling for one person? And if they laugh and say, well, that's impossible, oh, okay, no problem. And you just keep looking. But if somebody says, yeah, I get it, I know exactly what you're trying to do, then you're probably talking to the right person.
On the other hand, it means that sometimes an individual therapist is not the right person either. It's really someone who will help you work through relationships specifically, because there are some individual counseling who are more focused on making you, finding your own happiness.
Right.
And like, unfortunately, there's those stories where the therapist helped her realize that divorce is okay instead of helping her getting the skills to work on the marriage.
Right.
So it's really important to see if they're marriage motivated or just happiness motivated. So these are some questions to really be asked.
That's very, very, very good. And you mentioned there are some stories, and it's more than some stories. it's frighteningly common that people will seek out, they'll go to therapy, seek out some type of professional help. The conclusion they come to is, don't worry, there's not such a stigma of being divorced, and it's okay. And I think a person, I've seen this before, and I have to be careful how I say it. Maybe someone could even advise me if there are words that are more palatable. And perhaps against my better judgment, I'll say it again. The mental health profession, this is a sweeping, broad generalization, and should be taken as such, by design is amoral. What do I mean by amoral? Moral means that I do what's right. Immoral means I know what's right and I don't care. Amoral means we're not discussing, it's not a criterion. It's not precedent. We're not going to purposely do anything moral, but we're not going to force ourselves to do something moral just because it's moral. So, in other words, by design, again, this is a sweeping generalization, but the sort of clinical attachment that many therapists have is sort of like, look, I'm not here to tell you right from wrong. Go ask your rabbi. I'm here to figure out what works for you. Whether it's moral or it's not moral, it's not my judgment. Like you wouldn't ask a therapist a Shiloh and Bachalows, so you don't have to, it's not really their problem to be a mashpia and to tell you what's right and wrong. They're just trying to help you find what works for you. So when you go into that type of setting, it's really, the onus is really on you to say what works for you. And as a Torah observant Jew, you have to establish, look, if it's going to serve Hashem better, then it works for me. If it doesn't help me serve Hashem better, then even if it works for me, it doesn't work for me. Because it's not about the day what's going to immediately more convenient or more expedient or feel better. It's about the big picture. It's about me doing the shlichus in this world that Neshama was sent here for. So that's your, like I said, the onus is on you. You have to come in and be clear about your value system. It's more than just saying, are you a pro-marriage counselor when you go seeking professional help? It's more about saying, look, my Jewish values are the foundation of my worldview. I want you to make sure that we are working within that framework. And a therapist really shouldn't have any objection to that whatsoever. Just like it's not their problem to make sure that you are not being immoral, they don't have any objection for you to be moral. So if you make it clear, that's what works for you. That's your value system. Any success you have has to be a success as defined by the standards of Torah. Then not only should they not have any problem with that, but a good therapist will help you to do that and to do something that will work for you on every level. And ultimately, any solution that's a true solution does work on every level, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, socially, physically. But
you said in the previous call that you should be working in tandem with a mental health counselor specialist and a Rav Mashpia to make sure that everything is aligned.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Don't expect the therapist to do the rabbi's job, and don't expect the rabbi to do the therapist's job. But if you want to know if something's wrong or right, or not just necessarily, Shulchan Aruch, letter of the law, but you want to go beyond the letter of the law. You want to know according to Chassidus. And yeah, don't expect the therapist. It's not your problem to figure that out. You have to only come in with your value system, come in with your Jewish or even your Hasidic support system, which means Rav and Mashpia to check this thing out with, but in tandem with getting tools from the therapist.
Okay. So thank you. We have one last question that came in. When we're talking about chinuch, and there's really one best way to raise our kids, I can't just let go. My way is the better way.
I hear that. And what I'm going to say is that there are a lot of aspects to chinuch, and perhaps this is not an entirely satisfying answer, but what I'll say is like this. The shalom bias, the relationship between the parent and the children see in the home, in some ways is the biggest chinuch that we do them. And certainly it's the foundation for all chinuch. Any other lessons we teach them are only really reinforced by the peace between mother and father. So I think there's something to consider. Perhaps this is an imperfect comparison, but it's along the lines of the story of the fellow who wanted to say Kaddish, he had yortzeit for one of his parents, and that somebody else had kedima, that had priority, and there was in a shul where only one person could say Kaddish, and so he bowed out. And the story is told of various days, but the punchline is always the same, and the punchlines are true. The true purpose of Kaddish is a schus for the neshama. What's a greater schus for the neshama than the other person say Kaddish? Mm-hmm. So along the same lines, if you can compromise, that lesson is not lost on your children, even if they can't spell it out. I mean, even if they can't necessarily articulate that's what they're saying, but they feel there's peace, that there are two mature adults who are trying to live in peace and trying to put their egos aside. And that lesson is just as powerful as any other lesson you're teaching, if not more.
Mm-hmm. So, in other words, anything is really another way to look at it, and let go sometimes is the answer. Whether it's, even if sometimes it's a compromise doesn't work, like it's either this school or that school, but sometimes the idea of just the children seeing healthy relationship is even more important than the schools that they're going to.
Children seeing healthy relationships in their home.
Right.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge, and that's worthy of a whole other call. How much that affects not just the children in your home, but the children in a community, and therefore the entire community by ripple effect, and the amount of faith that children have in the system, and they have in their community, and they have in their religion, and they have in their upbringing. Yeah, it's based on the maturity of the relationships of the adults in their home where they grew up. Yeah, that affects everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you, Rabbi. Those are the questions that we'll address for tonight. If anyone has any other questions, you can send it to us at info@adaiad.org, or you can ask them anonymously at www.adaiad.org/ask-anonymous question. This conference call was recorded and will be available at adaiad.org/past-events, as well as any of the other conference calls and other events that we've had in the past. So thank you all, and good night. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you very much.